My sister-in-law, who was like a real sister to me, has passed away. Thank you, Rachel. As I spoke to the sister-in-law, who was smiling gently in the coffin, I murmured those words. Flowers scattered around, numerous letters from the attendees. Suddenly, a few photos caught my eye. And at that moment, what? I froze. The scene captured in the photos was unimaginable. It was not a tribute but pure malice. Who would do this? What for? Among the sobbing attendees, I quickly looked around. Then, our eyes met. A person, arms crossed, smirking. At that moment, a certain phrase from my sister-in-law came back to me. If something happens to me. Before I knew it, I had run out of the funeral home. Let's go back a bit in time. I am a 33-year-old housewife, living in a suburban rental apartment with my husband Scott, whom I married 5 years ago. We don't have children. Scott and I both like children and have been hoping to have them. But I have never been pregnant. We even went to the hospital to consult about it. But there was nothing particularly wrong with either of us. So, we are currently just waiting to naturally conceive. There are times I get down about it, but still, life with Scott is quite fulfilling. Being with gentle and kind Scott is comforting. And doing housework for him is a joy of being a housewife. On weekends, we go shopping together or travel. Just doing so makes me feel good, but there's another reason that makes me feel that way. That is the presence of Scott's sister, Rachel. She is 2 years older than me and has been friendly with me since the beginning of my marriage. This is because Rachel and I share the same hobby. We both like meticulous work, especially making accessories and embroidering small items. I enjoy this hobby in between household chores, and Rachel does it in between work. Rachel is more skilled in crafts than I am, and she advises me willingly whenever I have a question. She also shares dinner with me and has given me unused brand bags. She really treats me well. Moreover, Rachel is actively involved in volunteer work and goes out to help others whenever she finds time. I think of her as my real sister and respect her. Hi, Rachel. It's been a while. I brought the parts for the accessories we said we'd make today. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you for bringing them. I ran out of time to go buy them because I was at the hospital. After inviting me into her living room, Rachel said that apologetically. Shell has a chronic illness. It's not usually noticeable in her daily life. But thanks to regular medical exams and medication, she manages it. I said, don't worry about it, and spread the parts on the table. The accessory we were making that day was going to be very special for her. After all, it was for her wedding. A tiara adorned with plenty of pearls and beads. She had shown me the design, and it was already beautiful at that stage. I can't wait to see the actual piece. Rachel now has a fiancé, and they are planning to get married in about 6 months. I had met him before. And he was quite a handsome man and an elite graduate from a prestigious university. Yet he does not boast about it. He is humble and gentlemanly. I think he is very well suited for the virtuous Rachel. As we excitedly proceeded with our task, the intercom rang, announcing a visitor. Rachel quickly got up and said, "Just a minute," peering into the intercom monitor. Then, Rachel let out a disgusted, "Oh no," and reluctantly headed to the front door. I thought maybe a salesman had come, so I continued working. After a while, I heard footsteps in the hallway. When the living room door opened, there stood my father-in-law. "Ah, isn't that Alyssa? It's been a long time. It's nice of you, being a daughter-in-law and not showing your face." As soon as he saw me, my father-in-law furrowed his brow and made a sarcastic comment. Dad, what are you doing here? Don't tell me you've come to ask for money again? I'm not lending you any more. And neither will Scott. He must have come up on his own. Rachel quickly returned to the living room after him and sharply snapped. Scott and I have met his parents, who were living nearby, only a few times since we got married. It's virtually a state of estrangement. Because they are greedy and spendthrifts, constantly pestering their own children for money. It's cold of you, not helping your own family. You're marrying an elite corporate worker, right? Then you could lend us a little money, right? Oh, that's right. Alyssa. My father-in-law spoke to me in a coaxing tone. You'll lend us some money, right? I don't know when I can return it, but that's okay, right? Because you're the daughter-in-law. Do your duty. Oh, well, that's... Caught off guard by the sudden demand, I fumbled for words, but Rachel quickly intervened. Stop it. Don't bother Alyssa with this. Now, please leave right away. Rachel said that and physically pushed her father back towards the entrance. After the front door slammed, she quickly returned. I'm sorry for having such terrible parents. And with a sad face, she apologized. You don't need to apologize, Rachel. I'm not bothered by that at all. Come on, let's continue with our work, shall we? When I said this cheerfully, a smile finally returned to her face. Having such helpless parents can be tough on their children. Despite such issues, the tiara for Rachel was gradually nearing completion. Just one more step to go. But that was never to be fulfilled. Because suddenly, Rachel passed away. It was just a month before her wedding. Not being medically knowledgeable, I couldn't fully understand, but it seems a seizure, a symptom of her chronic illness, occurred, and she couldn't be treated in time. Usually, a seizure would calm down with her medication, but this time, she apparently didn't have her usual medicine with her. When I was told of her death, I couldn't quite mourn. It was all too sudden, and I couldn't quite grasp the situation. Gradually, the reality sunk in, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer due to the grief. However, I couldn't just keep mourning. There was a funeral to prepare. Scott, her brother, was to take on the role of the chief mourner. Normally, this role would be filled by a spouse or parents, but Rachel wasn't yet married. And her parents were unreliable as they were only concerned about life insurance money. It's insane to talk only about money when their own daughter has died. Could it be that her parents? I even had such thoughts. The attitude of my in-laws was just that terrible. Despite the issues, many people who cherished my sister-in-law during her life attended the funeral. She was loved by many. Thinking about that made me feel even more saddened, and I almost cried again. I held back the tears and pressed my fingertips to my eyes. Mourning endlessly wouldn't do her any good. As I thought this, her fiancé, with his eyes red, approached me. Alyssa, it's been a while. I never thought we'd be having a funeral instead of a wedding. He looked utterly worn out. It's truly unfortunate. It might not be easy, but don't get too down. Please at least make sure to eat well and get enough sleep. The fiancé replied in a barely audible voice, yes, and sank down onto a nearby chair. Don't get too down. It's easier said than done. I decided to open the coffin for the last time to definitively part ways with my sister-in-law. To settle my feelings. I believed that's what she would have wanted. Rachel, lying in the coffin, seemed as if she was just sleeping. Thank you for everything up till now, Rachel. I murmured this and was about to close the coffin when I noticed something next to her face. A photo. I had placed several mementos in the coffin for her to take to heaven. But I didn't remember putting in any photos. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stealthily picked it up. The moment I saw the few photos, I gasped in shock. I hurriedly covered my mouth. The photos showed my sister-in-law's fiancé entering a short-stay hotel with a woman I didn't recognize. Questions raced through my mind. Who put these here? What for? Is this photo even real? As I harbored these doubts, I surreptitiously glanced at her fiancé. Noticing my gaze, he briefly smirked. His earlier worn-out expression was replaced by a disgusting smile. His eyes were on what I held in my hand. Realizing his expression, it dawned on me. Rake's fiancé had put the photos in the coffin. Probably to destroy the evidence with her. Or as a spiteful act towards her or anyone who found them. What is this? What are you intending? I couldn't help but confront him. You found them. Well, you see it for what it is. That woman said she liked handicrafts, so I thought she was docile, but it was far from it. She dared to defy me, an elite, good-looking guy. Of course, I'd go for a younger, more obedient girl. At those words, I felt my blood run cold. You can't mean she became a nuisance to you. Why do you think she didn't have her medicine just when she had a seizure? With that, he smiled brightly. I was so frightened that I inadvertently cried out. Oh no. People around us gathered, startled. This man, I pointed at Rachel's fiancé, my finger trembling uncontrollably. What's wrong, Alyssa? Are you tired? I drove here today, so let me take you home. With an innocent face, he grabbed my arm. I reflexively shook off his hand and ran out of the funeral home. I could hear him calling after me, but I kept running. I was scared of him, but there was another reason. I remembered something Rachel had said while she was alive. If something happens to me, look under the closet. At the time, I thought it was just a joke, but now it seemed like an urgent message from her. Her house wasn't far. I ran, holding my heels in one hand and calling the police with the other. Such a person couldn't be left at large. He needed to be punished appropriately. The police seemed unalarmed but agreed to head to the funeral home for now. I had to hurry, too. With desperate urgency, I reached Rachel's house. I didn't need to worry about keys. I had a spare. I opened the front door and headed for the bedroom with the closet. The closet was immediately to the right as I entered the room. I crouched on the flooring and peeked under the closet. There was something white there. I reached in and pulled it out. It was an envelope. I quickly checked inside and found duplicates of the photos from earlier and a voice recorder. These were indeed evidence of infidelity. I grabbed them and ran back to the funeral home. On the way, I decided to play the voice recorder to check its contents. By the time I arrived at the funeral home, the police had already arrived. And a patrol car was parked in the parking lot. As I entered, all eyes suddenly turned to me. So, it's a misunderstanding. I haven't done anything. She died because of her illness. You're saying there was a report. Maybe it's just a prank or harassment against me. After all, there's no evidence. If you're going to accuse me, bring at least some proof. At the front of the Rachel's coffin, the police and the fiancé were deep in conversation. The police seemed to believe him as they chuckled and said, "Well, we just came because there was a report." Wait. Here's the evidence. I stood on a nearby chair and pressed the play button on the voice recorder. Cheating? That's terrible. We're about to get married, to betray me like this. Shut up. It's not my fault you're not cute. It's your fault. I have proof of your cheating. Should I send this photo to your company? Cut off your relationship with that girl now. And I'll forgive you. Please, come back. If you do that, you better believe your life is over. The voices of Rachel and her fiancé filled the funeral home. The vividness of the recording silenced everyone, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. How could you do this to my sister? Scott was the first to speak out amidst the silence. Triggered by his words, other attendees began to shout in succession. Everyone continued to hurl insults at the fiancé. What the hell? It's not my fault. She's the one who wouldn't listen. Just as the situation nearly escalated into a major uproar, a police officer, previously uninvolved, blew his whistle. The piercing sound calmed everyone down a bit. Confirming that, the officer then said, "Could you come to the station and tell us the details?" Previously appearing uninterested, the officer now stared sharply at the fiancé. Following his lead, the attendees also glared at him. Realizing he couldn't escape, he grudgingly muttered, "Damn it," and his shoulders slumped. Sometime later, the fiancé was arrested. He stubbornly refused to admit his guilt even as he was taken away. But it seems he couldn't escape the relentless interrogation by the police. I was informed by the police that it appears the fiancé had seized and disposed of the medication when Rachel had her seizure. I can't think of him as human for doing such a horrible thing. Ideally, he would stay behind bars forever, but he will probably be released in a few years. Concerned that he might seek revenge after being released, Scott requested a transfer to protect me, and we moved far away. Furthermore, this incident led us to completely cut ties with the despicable in-laws, who thought only of money even after their daughter's death. We'll likely never see them again. Moving to an unfamiliar place without acquaintances was confusing at first. But now I have made friends through my hobby of handicrafts and am enjoying a fulfilling life. There's also another piece of good news. I've discovered that I am pregnant. While we don't know the gender yet, we have already decided on the name. Whether it's a boy or a girl, we will name them Ray. Taking letters from my respected sister-in-law Rachel's name. Rachel must have been so frustrated. Betrayed by someone she loved and having her life cut short midway. So, I vowed to live my life fully, for both of us.